Shangri-La is a map I used to hate. Why did I hate it? Because it was hard. Sure, I might have given out reasons like the special enemies or the mud pit maze, but at the end of the day, my argument boiled down to, I don't like this map because it's hard. And there was a time that I considered this one of the worst maps in all of Zombies alongside the likes of Transit, Moon, and Die Rise. Nowadays, Shangri-La is still one of my least played maps, but do I hate it? No. And what changed for me is that I learned the difference between difficulty and challenge. Difficulty just pertains to how hard something is. Challenge, however, is a bit more complicated than that. Challenge is tied to difficulty, but it's also tied to if that difficulty is fun and fair. An example of difficulty would be if I went into Black Ops 4's custom mutations, cranked up the spawn rate and speed of all the zombies and special enemies, and reduced my health to just 50 hit points, aka one hit will kill me. That's hard, but does it mean it's challenging? No, because it's too brutal and punishing, and the player really doesn't have much of a chance to survive in that. Challenge gives the player a chance and lets them overcome that difficulty. Sheer difficulty that isn't challenge is just about brute forcing your way through it until eventually you win. It's not necessarily learning about how to play better. And even if it is, it's usually not very fun. What does that have to do with Shangri-La? Well, I learned that it wasn't that Shangri-La was difficult, it was challenging. And I just happened to suck at zombies at the time. Okay, to be fair, I still kinda suck at zombies nowadays, but not as much as I did before. So all the people that I've seen who put Shangri-La as one of the best maps in all of Zombies, I realize they aren't complete fucking lunatics. They're just a lot better at the game than I am. And Shangri-La offers a nice challenge that fits their skill level. And the reason why I don't play Shangri-La as much as they do is because I'm just not as good at zombies. And that's basically my thesis for this entire video. Shangri-La is the most challenging map in all of Zombies. And that's because that challenge is incredibly well designed. By this point in Black Ops 1, Treyarch was really honing in on the specifics of Black Ops 1 Zombies, and how everything worked, and so they carefully constructed a challenge around that. And I think the most obvious example of this is the fact that this map is fucking tight. Most of the paths in this map are about 2 zombies wide. If there's a horde in your way, getting around it is really difficult. You'll likely have to kill them. However, if you are skilled enough, you can actually slip around them. Now, this is difficult because you have to run right past the zombies, so your precision in your movement has to be on point. But this is a skill you can learn. And this is a skill you're probably going to need to master if you want to get good at this map. Speaking of, the map is basically designed in a giant circle. And compared to the past few maps, it's actually surprisingly small, which can certainly make it feel very crowded if you're playing co-op. Whichever direction you take, it's going to take you 4 doors to get to the power. There's 2 power switches for some reason, but they're right next to each other, so it's not really a big deal. The direction you take is likely going to be dictated by where the box is at, whether if it's in the waterfall area or if it's in the mine. With the map being as tight as it is, getting strong weapons is very important. Shang also brings back an idea from Shi no Numa, that being the randomized perk spawns, but it doesn't work quite the same as it did in Shi no Numa. In Shi no Numa, the perks were all completely randomized. Shangri-La, however, randomizes some of the perks within certain pools. Quick Revive will always be in the spawn room, that never changes. Jug and Speed Cola, however, can swap locations with each other. Meanwhile, Double Tap, Stamina, PhD, and Deadshot will all swap locations within their own pool within the mines. And then, of course, when Mule Kit got patched in, that's always going to be found in the waterfall area. Since it got patched in after the fact, I'm pretty sure making it swap locations with the others would have been tricky. There's no new perks this time around, however, considering that we got a new perk on Call of the Dead and 2 new perks on Ascension, I think that's forgivable. What's less forgivable, however, is the Pack-a-Punch. Around the map, there's 4 pressure plates, and depending on how many players there are in your game, some of them will be raised. All the raised ones need to be stood on in order to activate Pack-a-Punch. What's the problem with this? Everybody has to be standing on the pressure plates at the same time. In solo, this isn't a problem at all. In co-op, it's a fucking nightmare. If you are not coordinated with your teammates, it is very likely that you're not going to be able to Pack-a-Punch. And unfortunately, oftentimes you'll get matched with at least one teammate who isn't coordinated, who doesn't know anything about how to activate Pack-a-Punch, or who's AFK. And if you can't get everybody to stand on all the pressure plates at the same time, you're not going to see Pack-a-Punch. This is especially more annoying in the modern day since nobody seems to have a fucking mic anymore ever since the release of the Xbox One. Whereas on the Xbox 360 when this map was new, usually you could find people with mics, which made coordinating a lot easier. Occasionally you'll get lucky, but if you're going to play this in online co-op, I just accept the fact that you're very likely not going to be able to Pack-a-Punch. And this is the problem with making essential features of the map require coordination among all of your teammates. It's just so easy for someone to not know what to do, and then that fucks it up for everyone else. Having said that, I usually don't select this map if I want to play co-op, because along with that, the map itself is really small and there's not a lot of room for everybody to operate. I suppose maybe 2-player co-op is feasible, but a full team of 4 just is too crowded for a map as small as this. Especially when most of the playable area is extremely tight corridors and not bigger open spaces. This is definitely a better map to play solo. But back to the good. I really love this map's wonder weapon. The 3179 JGB215. Okay, I'm just convinced that when naming this wonder weapon, Treyarch ran out of ideas, so they just slammed some poor employee's face on a keyboard and just went with whatever came out. Since 3179 JGB215 is a bit too much for the average person to remember, let alone recite, most people refer to it as the baby gun or the shrink ray. Because what this thing does is it shrinks all the zombies to the size of ants. You can then shoot them for the insta-kill, or you can instead charge through them and kick them high in the air, and it is satisfying as hell to use. However, this provides a bit of a risk. If you charge into the zombies to kick them, you gotta make sure you get them before they unshrink, otherwise they could attack you and potentially down you. If you end up in the middle of a bunch of shrunken zombies and they unshrink, that's gonna spell huge trouble. Not to mention, the zombies that are shrunk can still hit you. It doesn't do nearly as much damage as a full-size zombie though, but that is something you need to keep in mind. If that doesn't sound like a good prospect to you, you can also switch to a regular gun and shoot them for the insta-kill, but considering that they're small, they're kinda hard to hit and you're probably not gonna get nearly as many of them as you would if you just barrel through them. This sounds like it would put the baby gun below other infinite damage wonder weapons, like say the thunder gun, but there's a lot of good qualities to help balance out the risk. First of all, it has a higher ammo count than a lot of infinite damage wonder weapons, with a total of 25 shots by default and 48 total when it's pack-a-punched. Additionally, since this wonder weapon doesn't kill the zombies directly but just shrinks them, making killing them extremely fucking easy, it means the zombies that you kill can drop power-ups, including max ammos. Compare this to something like the thunder gun or the wave gun, which don't drop power-ups. It's a nice risk-reward that I think is really well designed. Additionally, explosive weapons seem to also be popular on this map, especially if you can't pull the wonder weapon from the box. Normally, explosive weapons on a map as tight as this aren't really a good idea, but with PhD Flopper it can actually be pretty viable, especially if you need to eliminate a horde of zombies in your path. And speaking of which, let's talk about the special enemies. There are 3 new special enemies. There's the Napalm Zombie, the Shrieker Zombie, and the Monkeys. And I think these more resemble the modern boss zombie than anything we've had previously, as they spawn alongside the regular zombies and cause chaos and spice up the gameplay. The Napalm Zombie is slow and hulking, and if you get too close to it, it'll explode, and if you kill it, it'll explode. This is very powerful and can kill you if you're too close. which can be especially dangerous on a map as tight as Shangri. Additionally, he leaves down fire that can damage you, but it can also kill the zombies. This sounds like an ambush tactic that would be cheap bullshit, but because you clearly hear him spawn into the map, you'll know when to be on the lookout for him. Plus, if you start getting close to him, your screen will catch fire, letting you know that you need to back away. Maybe the explosion radius is a bit much, but overall I think he's a really nice special enemy. The Shrieker zombie is a really fast bitch who will run up to you and blind you with their screams. It doesn't take much more firepower to bring down than the standard zombie though, and because it moves more quickly and somewhat more erratically than the regular zombies, it's pretty easy to spot them. If you don't take her out quickly though, she can blind you. And then there's the monkeys who, like the monkeys on Ascension, are here to steal your shit, but unlike the monkeys on Ascension, they're not completely fucking aggravating. Rather than stealing your perks, these ones steal your power-ups whenever they drop. Whenever one drops, you'll hear the monkeys start going crazy and one will come to take it from you. This sounds like you would need to grab your power-up immediately, and that's certainly one way to look at it. But something else is when the monkey grabs it and starts making its way over to the Pack-a-Punch temple, the power-up will continuously change while it's being carried. Now, this may be annoying if, say, it grabs a max ammo and turns it into something less useful, but on the contrary, you can turn something that might not be useful into something that is. Like, say, those carpenter power-ups that you don't really give a shit about. Well, you can let the monkeys grab it intentionally and then wait for them to change it into something more useful, like, say, a max ammo, a double points, or an insta-kill, and then kill them when you get on the one you want. Now, doing this in the heat of combat is a bit tricky, but if you're skilled enough, you can pull it off to get max ammos on a regular basis. Additionally, if the power-up they grab is a max ammo, they can actually change it into a random perk bottle. Now, the window to kill the monkey so that it drops the random perk bottle is very short because it feels like it's only the random perk bottle for like half a second before it changes into something else. But if you're good with your timing, then you can actually get more than your 4 standard perks and get all the perks on the map. So overall, while I thought the monkeys were annoying when I was younger, I think overall they actually do more good than bad, because they offer nice elements of strategy. So what else does Shangri offer? The idea of exploring an ancient South American temple is really cool, and thematically there's a lot of things about the map that fit that theme. Most are good, but there's one that I don't really like. Let's just get this one out of the way. I don't like the mud pit maze. Never have, and I still don't. The idea is cool, admittedly. It basically lets you step on a pressure plate to run through at full speed. However, the direction can constantly change on you. Not to mention making it really tight, and it sort of snakes you around until you get to your destination. If you don't want to deal with that, you can instead go through the mud, which is much slower, but you can just go directly to where you want. Here's my problem though. There's 3 entrances and exits to this mud pit maze, but there's only one starting point at each location, and it selects your destination at random. Which means you could be coming from the spawn room and want to go over to where the perk machine is, but instead it sends you over to where the water slide is. And hell, sometimes this thing will loop you back around to where you initially came from. Now, if you stand on the same tile for a couple of seconds, it'll eventually collapse and you can just forge the rest of your way through the mud. But that requires you to just stand around and wait for a couple seconds, which is not only boring, but can also get you killed. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad if the mud didn't slow you down more than it does on other maps, but it does, and you can't even hop through it to increase your speed either. Crossing this thing is usually an exercise in frustration, but it's only a small part of the map, so I'm not going to throw the whole map out just because of it. The rest of the thematic features, however, are really cool. There's 2 geysers in the mines which can spit you back out to the surface if you stand on them long enough, which basically allows for shortcuts around the map to help the flow. Additionally, there's also a minecart you can ride from the MPL room down into the mines, which is really fun. And there's also a water slide you can take as well from the area where the mud pit maze is at. These are really fun and interesting ways to have fast travel on this map, and I really do appreciate that. Additionally, there's also the punji spikes, which will come out of the ground and stab you if you're not quick enough when leaving or entering the spawn room. This might be annoying if you get stuck in there, but you have to make sure it's clear before sprinting through, otherwise you'll get stuck and potentially killed. Granted, new players to this map will likely get blindsided by these things, but once you know they're there, then they're fairly simple to work around. You just gotta wait and time your run through just right. Also, the claymores have been replaced with the spikemores. It's basically just a claymore with a bunch of punji spikes attached to the front, and they impale the zombies whenever it goes off. It doesn't seem to increase the effectiveness by a huge amount, but it's a cool detail nonetheless that I really do appreciate. While there aren't any traditional traps on this map, there is a kinda trap in the waterfall area. There's a brick that says do not hold X, and if you hold X, it basically increases the flow of the waterfall, which kills the zombies that go around you and pushes you to the back. And another thing, I absolutely adore the atmosphere of this map. It is one of the most beautiful zombies maps we've ever had. In fact, I think it's my pick for the most beautiful zombies map we've ever had. It's probably my pick for the best looking map on the Xbox 360 COD games. And while the Xbox 360's graphics certainly look dated nowadays, it's still really impressive and nice to look at. In terms of side quests, the only one on this map is the music Easter egg. When you activate all 3 of the 115 meteorites, it plays the song Pareidolia. Great fucking song, by the way. And then there's the main Easter egg, Time Travel Will Tell. I'm not gonna go through all the steps, but it seems like a pretty cool Easter egg. You time travel to the past by activating these 4 buttons in spawn, which happens during an eclipse, and you follow the events of 2 explorers, Gary and Brock, who are stuck in a time loop. The only RNG-based step is getting the baby gun from the box, but that's forgivable because it's used in a very unique way that makes sense. There's also some pretty interesting puzzle steps, like the tile matching steps, as well as the mud pit maze code and the dynamite gong step. Not as much gameplay challenge as some future Easter eggs, but still it seems pretty solid. I say seems pretty solid because I've never actually done this Easter egg itself because, like Ascension before it and like many Easter eggs after it, it requires 4 players. Even at the time, this already made the Easter egg hard enough because you had to find a full team of 4 people who were good at the game, were coordinated, and willing to do the Easter egg, and basically makes it damn near impossible to do it nowadays, because Black Ops 1 is a 12-year-old game at this point, released for a console that's 2 generations old. Not many people are still playing it, meaning you'd have to find a full lobby of 4 people who are on Shangri, and has mics and can coordinate, and is willing to do the Easter egg, and also aren't hackers. Because unfortunately that's a problem in Black Ops 1 nowadays. Thing is though, I can't really see why this Easter egg requires 4 people. Now I can see why it can't be done solo, because the matching tile steps just simply wouldn't work. But the rest of the steps seem like they could have been scaled to work with fewer people. Like, I feel like 2 people should be able to do this Easter egg. So I find it odd that it requires 4 people. The reward though is pretty cool though. Once you acquire the focusing stone, whoever picked it up will get all of the perks, and they will last for the rest of the game, even if they go down. Not to mention, everybody will get the focusing stone in order to do the moon Easter egg. I gotta say, it's a pretty cool reward, but I do have to ask why only the person who picked up the focusing stone gets all the perks, because, I mean, everybody did the Easter egg, so only rewarding one person seems kinda silly. Interestingly though, after doing the Easter egg, there's a radio in the spawn room, which when used, can reset the whole Easter egg, and now you can do it again, and essentially you can just redo the Easter egg all 4 times so that all 4 players get it. Seems like a bit much just to get the full reward for everybody. Like, I'm not sure why they didn't just grant it to everyone. But at the very least, you can redo the Easter egg in the same game to get everybody all their perks. That about wraps up my thoughts on the Black Ops 1 original, so let's take a look at the Zombies Chronicles version. Now, in all my previous episodes, when I talked about the differences in the Zombies Chronicles version, they're usually very minor. With the exception of Noct, the changes made from the original version to the Black Ops 3 version just wasn't so significant for me to vastly prefer one over the other. Sure, I might have a slight preference for one of them, but it's usually by a very insignificant amount. The closest we've come previously is Noct, because that offers a fairly different experience based on which version you're playing. But even then, I think I liked all those experiences by a similar amount, just liked them for different things. Shangri-La, however, is probably the first map where my opinion on the Chronicles version varies significantly from my opinion on the original, and unfortunately, it's not in favor of the remaster. This may sound odd because the differences between the original version of Shang and the Chronicles version are about as much as the original versions of the other maps and the Chronicles versions of those maps. But on Shangri-La, it has a much bigger impact. Let's talk positives first, though. Visually, this map has received an overhaul to take advantage of the better hardware of the Xbox One and PS4, and if you thought the Black Ops 1 original looked great, the Black Ops 3 version is somehow even more beautiful. Admittedly, I do think they went just a bit heavy-handed with the yellow filter, but even that's a nitpick, and I don't really think it really negatively impacts the map anyway. The Samantha Doll side quest was added. Much like the one on Shi No Numa, you need to keep the starter pistol to do the first step for it, where you shoot the pans in the order 1-1-5. But this will let you find the Samantha Doll, do the hide-and-seek step where you find it and shoot it, and eventually it'll give you a max ammo as well as an instrumental song, which I think is a nice addition. Gobblegums were added, and your opinion on that's really just going to depend on how you feel about the Gobblegum system overall. And the Black Ops 1 guns were replaced with Black Ops 3 guns, though there are a few classic weapons in the box. Unfortunately, I think that's about where the positives stop. Remember what I said earlier about how Treyarch looked into the specifics of Black Ops 1 zombies and carefully constructed a challenge around that? Well, the problem with taking a map that's carefully constructed around one game, and then taking that and throwing it into another game, is that you'll start to notice a lot of things tend to break. First and foremost, the zombies. In Black Ops 1, this provides a brutal but fair challenge. In Black Ops 3, though, the zombies are a lot more aggressive. They hit faster, hit farther, and spread out more. And remember what I said earlier about how in Black Ops 1 you could run past a horde of zombies if you're skilled enough and your movement's precise enough? Well, if you try doing that in Black Ops 3, you're gonna die almost instantly. Which ironically makes the map harder in Black Ops 3, but not in a good way, unfortunately. Now, you might be wondering why I didn't bring this up in any of my previous map reviews, and that's because the design of those maps are a bit more generic, and what I mean by that is that they work in Black Ops 3 just fine. Now, they were definitely designed with their original games in mind, but because it wasn't honing in on so many specific aspects of the way zombies behave in Black Ops 1, it meant that the differences when you brought them over to Black Ops 3 weren't really all that extreme. Maybe it made navigating around the zombies a little bit harder, but it's still fair. But that's not the case in Shang because it's just way too tight for the zombies as aggressive as the ones in Black Ops 3. Now, I know some of the maps that were made for Black Ops 3 can be pretty tight, but maps like Shadows of Evil or Gorod Krovi were made with the more aggressive zombie AI of Black Ops 3 in mind. As you'll notice that usually they aren't nearly as tight as Shangri-La, and even when there are tight corridors, they're not very long in comparison. Which just means that it makes it an unfair challenge in Chronicles Shang. But that's not the only thing this broke. Much like Chronicles Ascension before it, as well as Chronicles Moon and Origins after it, PhD Flopper has been replaced with Widow's Wine. Which means the very powerful explosive weapons aren't really viable anymore. Because on the map as tight as Shang, it is just far too easy to blow yourself up. At least when Ascension removed PhD Flopper in Chronicles, the map is open enough so that explosive weapons are still viable as long as you're careful. But on a map as tight as this one, you really need that protection from explosive damage. Now, there is the danger closest Gobblegum, but unfortunately, because of the way Gobblegums work, you have to get every other Gobblegum in your pack before you can get that one again. And even then, it's still randomly selected. And since the effect only lasts for 4 rounds, even if you get lucky, there's just going to be some rounds where you don't have that explosive protection. And more often than not, you are not going to get the ideal luck. So, explosive weapons are out, and navigating past the zombies is out, so what about the wonder weapon? Pretty much the only other saving grace. Unfortunately, Treyarch had to fuck with that too. For some inexplicable reason, they made it so that every time you kick a shrunken zombie with this thing, it halts your momentum. In Black Ops 1, you could shrink an entire horde of zombies and barrel through them, but there's still risk because the zombies can still swipe at you, plus they can grow big if you take too long and swarm around you. See, I thought this was enough of a risk to justify the extra ammo and the fact that they can drop power-ups, but Treyarch just decided that it wasn't enough and caused you to halt your momentum, which means even if you do shrink an entire horde, it's very likely you're only going to be able to kick about 10 or so zombies before they all grow big again. Now, you could switch to another weapon to try and just shoot them when they're shrunk, but like I said earlier, when the zombies are really small, hitting them is very difficult, and you're probably not going to be able to get as many of them as you would if you could just barrel through them like you could in Black Ops 1. So you can't move around zombies, you can't kill them with explosive weapons, and you can't barrel through them with the Wonder Weapon, so it goes from being a brutal but fair challenge in Black Ops 1 to just difficulty in Black Ops 3. Now, you could say that shit like the Gobblegums and Double Pack-a-Punch make it easier, and while that's true to an extent, you still need to be able to eliminate or dodge the zombies. All the really powerful Gobblegums that can help you the most with that are Megas and therefore run on a limited supply. As for Double Pack-a-Punch, while it does do infinite damage and can theoretically carry you to any round that you want, that relies on you being able to train, because you can't activate it on demand necessarily. Sure, you can try doing a full map train, or you could train in the MPL room, but those are really tight, and almost inevitably you're going to be put into a situation where you need to quickly kill the zombies in front of you, or be able to slip past them. And the Black Ops 3 version just botches that. The Spike Morse just got changed to regular-ass trip mines, and improvements such as making the Easter egg not require 4 players just was completely fucking ignored. Or the fact that only the person that picks up the focusing stone gets all the perks when they complete the Easter egg instead of the whole team. Like, I understand that a remaster is supposed to stay faithful to the design of an original map, but small shit like that can be fixed. If Treyarch can add getting all of the perks as a reward for doing the Ascension Easter egg when it wasn't there in the original, or making the Moon Easter egg completable in solo when you previously had to have at least 2 people, then I don't see why they couldn't give all the perks to everybody upon completion of the Shangri-La Easter egg, or make it so you can do it with just 2 people. Because looking through the steps, there really isn't anything that requires 4 people that couldn't easily be altered to make it not require 4 people. So they didn't really improve much about the map, but they made a lot of things about it worse. And I think that if there's anything to take away from the Chronicles version of Shangri-La, it's that taking a map from one game and just putting it into another without changing much doesn't always work. I see this a lot in regards to maps in Black Ops 4 or Cold War being brought over to like Black Ops 3 or vice versa because of the differences in gameplay mechanics. And every time I see that argument, I always raise an eyebrow, because if you look at Chronicles Shang compared to the original, Black Ops 3 is not that mechanically different from Black Ops 1. In fact, the main differences are just things that they added. But there's some specifics in the way of zombie behavior, weapon behavior, and other shit like that that can completely break an experience. So when you consider Black Ops 4 and Cold War's gameplay systems are also a lot different, it means it's not going to be a very smooth transition. Because if this much stuff broke when bringing Shangri-La from Black Ops 1 to Black Ops 3, imagine how much would break if you tried to bring, say, Ancient Evil to Black Ops 3. But I digress. So what are my final ratings for this map? Well, normally my ratings for the map just mainly reflects how much I personally enjoy the map. Like, I don't have, like, points awarded to specific categories and then just have an objective way of measuring that, even if that's what it looks like. However, I'm going to break tradition and mainly judge the map on how it's designed, because even though I might not enjoy playing Shangri-La as much as most other Zombies maps, I can definitely see that it is a well-designed map. And the issue with it that I have that makes me not play it as much is really just my own skill. At least for the Black Ops 1 version, anyway. So even though personally I don't really play Shangri-La too much, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 for the Black Ops 1 version. because I legitimately think the map deserves that. However, with the changes that I mentioned for the Black Ops 3 version, I'm unfortunately going to have to drop it to a 4 out of 10 for the Chronicles version, which means they average out to a 6.0 out of 10. Anyways, that's about it for this video. If you enjoyed, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe for more, and tell me what you think of Shangri-La. Anyways, that's it. Peace!